Hello, everybody. It says that we're setting up the meeting, and it also says that it's going live. So maybe you see us, maybe you don't.
Yep, right now it looks like we just see you, though.
Oh, that's a start. Hi, guys. I'm here. Can we see Alicia too?
It's one of those where when we talk, it's just switching cameras. So
let me switch back then. Hi, guys. Welcome to Somos Fun Club. We're actually here on time, which is a start. But now, let's see if we can get it to go to gallery view. Hi, if you've been with us for any number of weeks, you'll know that technology is always a problem here at not summer. It's not summer. It feels like summer at Somos at Home Fun Club. But no matter how technology is trying to destroy our lives, we will continue to have fun in spite of it. Welcome to the summer. No, oh my gosh, I can't say Somos Fun Club without saying Summer Somos Fun Club. We had a Summer Somos Fun Club last year, and I mean, Alicia will probably have a Summer Somos Fun Club again this year, right?
I think so, because it's so much fun.
So much fun. But for now, it's just Somos at Home Fun Club. And I'm Martina Bex. This is Alicia Cardenas. And we are super excited that you guys are here to join us today. Finally, we had to postpone this fun club meeting a week because
my internet died. It turns out there's like a vine in my neighbor's yard that ate through all of our internet cables. So we had to wait for a technician to come and like do a workaround. And then it was Comcast. And we're just really grateful that we have internet at all, because really it's a first world problem. And I acknowledge that I am really lucky. But I'm really happy to be here.
And I am really happy that you are here as a magical unicorn. Do you want to tell us, just because I'm sure that teachers are seeing that and are curious about how they can have fun with that too with their classes. What is going on with the horn on your head?
So there is an app that's a spinoff of Snapchat called Snap Camera. And you install it, and when you open Zoom or WebEx, I found, which is another very Zoom-like thing, you can decide what camera to send your image through. And if you send it through Snap Camera, you have all of these awesome filters. This is the one that I really like right now because I like how the ears move with me. Isn't that great? Yeah. But I might be changing it up if I get bored. There is nothing quite like giving a live Zoom meeting with my kids, where I'll start out as a unicorn and like the kids, they don't know what to say. They're just like, seriously? Because I do wear unicorn horns during class. Not because I'm trying to channel Annabelle Williamson, but because I also love costumes. Yeah.
And in fact, you have a previous life as a costume.
Yes, I have worked in a lot of costume shops. So it's really fun to just change it up and then talk about it. Keeps things exciting. It keeps the kids on their toes, and it's just like Zoom meetings are terrible, guys. Why not have a little fun?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do right now. Right. Have you ever? I have to ask. Have you ever come up with a story? Like, has your appearance ever sparked a story with your students?
No, but that is absolutely in the plans. Awesome. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do. I think I'm going to do that next week as my final.
Cool.
Final meeting with my kids.
Yeah. And that's a big, yeah. Oh, can you say yes, this is the right, Lisa, you are in the right place. This is the right way to do this. Alicia, can you say again what the name of the plugin that you?
Sure. It is Snap Camera. And I believe all I did was go to I Googled Snap Camera and followed the instructions to download it.
Easy peasy,
I have a Mac.
Squeezy.
I did it while I was on a meeting with somebody else and like reappeared as a unicorn, and it was pretty epic. So I would try
right now, but I don't think my internet would handle it. And you mentioned that, so you have a plan for your last class next week, and it's not just your last class of the year, this is your last class for a while. So
Yeah.
talk to us about that.
Well, as many of
keep
you
it
may or
fun
may not,
because this is Fun Club.
right? So I'm super excited and also really sad to be leaving my classroom this year. This is not how any of us expected to end the year, but this really isn't how I expected to end my years in the classroom at this phase in my life. So I decided to make a video for my kids to say goodbye, and also to ask them to share their best memories of Spanish class. Some of these kids I've had for a year or two or longer. Some of these kids I've known since they were in 3rd or 4th grade. And I'm really excited to see what they take away. And also because I really want to end on a positive note.
Yeah.
Boy, things have been rough. Yeah. The other thing is I genuinely want to ask them what's going well with distance learning, and what they want more of. And I want a little feedback that isn't like where I don't feel like I have to change it right now. I just want to know how they're feeling about it. And I will say, I got these questions from Anne Marie Chase, awesome. Who I was commiserating with after a particularly rough class, and she made this suggestion, and I'm so excited to go with it.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear what they have to say. And I'm glad that you've had this time with them, especially because as we move into next year and you're going to be our full-time director of training, which I am so excited about and thankful for. I know that as schools are making decisions about what the year is going to look like next year, all of that insight that you get from your students about what has gone well from their perspective is going to be really valuable as we shape our training and shape our resources for the fall. Oh my gosh, I can't even think about it though, really.
I know. But speaking of resources, I want to say a big, huge welcome to all of the new teachers that we added in our group. So these are pre-service teachers who are joining our collaboration, our collaborative group to get support. We love you, and we know that the number one or one of the biggest contributors to teachers' success and teachers staying in the profession is mentorship and support. And we are here for you.
Yes.
This group is really valuable for that. So welcome. And you want to talk about some questions?
Yeah, well, I mean, I do, but I'm also just enjoying talking to you. And that just made me really sentimental, because I was thinking about myself as a first-year teacher, and that was when I met Michelle Whaley, and she totally took me under her wing and taught me how to really be an effective teacher. And so it's so cool that that these teachers joining our group are going to have access to that from you and so many others. So we are going to talk about questions. Alicia, I just pulled up the slideshow and I'm waiting for it to the live feed to catch up so that I can see if it looks like it's maybe going to freeze up on me, but I want to see how big the screen is. So today we are talking about questions. Okay, it's showing up exactly as it is. That's okay. So I am not going to be able to really monitor questions in the Facebook group super well. I'm going to try. Okay. But yeah, we are here to talk about the question lab, and I'm so excited about this. So Alicia, I just am so excited for next year with her being our full-time director of training, because she just keeps messaging me ideas every night. And she's like, don't respond to this right now. Oh, I know you're in the middle of dinner. Don't respond to this, but I just had this idea. And she is just so gifted as a trainer. She's so good at it. And with all of her classroom experience and her training experience, these tools that she is developing are so helpful and useful. And I can't wait to show you this little question lab that we're going to walk through a little taste of it today as a trial run. So why are we talking about questioning, Alicia?
Well, why don't you go to present? Because I think it'll be bigger for everybody.
Oh gosh. Okay. I'm going to attempt to do that. View.
Good luck.
Present.
So why are we talking about questions? Because questions help us connect. And one of our biggest mindset shifts for that we really ask teachers who are interested in teaching with comprehension-based methods is to really look at the mindset shift of connection over curriculum.
And that's kind of ironic because we're here in this almost curriculum collaboration group. So this is a group that is like in name about curriculum, but we're not actually about curriculum.
We're really just about connecting with kids, connecting with our students. If your students are not kids, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm still thinking of my 8th graders as little tiny children.
Yeah. So questions are going to allow you to better connect with your students because, well, one of the reasons, there's so many different kinds of questions. The kind of questions that we're going to focus on today is just at the most basic level, that if your students don't understand what you're saying, if your students don't understand the content you're trying to talk about, like the language that you're using in trying to talk about content, then you will not be able to connect with them. They will not be able to connect with the content. So that is why comprehension is so important when we talk about, the overall vision for what our language classes are supposed to be doing. Well, one of the reasons that it is. So talk to us about the kinds of questions we're going to be focusing on today.
So we're really going to be focusing on processing questions. Maybe people are joining this group because they've heard about this thing called comprehensible input or CI, but comprehensible is just what you can do as a teacher, make language comprehensible. Like you can do your best, but our goal is not just to be comprehensible, but to be comprehended. We want the students to understand what we're saying. And using processing questions is one really key, I would say, core skill. And that's kind of where this idea came out of, is that it is really hard when you first start asking questions to ask good questions. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go through a little process of talking about what are good questions. And again, we're just focusing on processing questions today.
Are processing questions the same thing as higher order thinking questions, Alicia?
They are not. Higher order thinking questions absolutely have a place in all levels. Level 1 first week on. However, for the purposes of today, we're really just looking at making sure that kids understand, that students understand what we're saying, that it's comprehended, not just comprehensible.
Awesome. Yeah, and I wanted to clarify that because you noticed that a lot of people, as they were having the request to join the group, we're talking about higher order thinking questions. So we want to manage expectations, and we do have a lot of resources available both on my blog and Alicia's about higher order thinking questions, and we may even tackle those in a later fun club. But today we're talking processing questions. So take it away, Alicia.
All right, next slide, please. Martina has control. Isn't that fun? So in the comments right now, what do you think the purpose of questions is? Now there's a little bit of a lag, but yes. What do you think the purpose of questions is?
Oh my gosh. So that is why I'm turning down I'm trying to follow on my phone, but I can't do that with the volume on. Then I'm going to really get confused. Okay. Yeah. So the delay. So the purpose of processing questions specifically, or any kind of questions are we asking at this point?
Processing questions. Ooh, I hear connecting with my students, check for understanding, to enjoy a conversation. And when I say I hear, I really mean I read, but to acquire information, to find out what kids know. These are all awesome.
Yes, all those things.
To engage students, to get students to think, to get insight into what they're thinking, to get information to connect with others. These are amazing.
Yeah.
All of those and more. Today, we're really just going to focus on checking for understanding. And this is also a differentiation technique. So asking questions is differentiation. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So first,
and I would say, just jumping in, I would say in doing so, that's what allows students to remain engaged, because if checking for understanding, ensuring that students are actually picking up what you're putting down, they're actually understanding what you think they are understanding, making sure it's comprehended, not just comprehensible, allows students to be engaged in the class, because if they cannot be engaged if they're not following.
So I want to talk about a key term. Often people who use comprehension-based methods use the word in bounds. And what that means, very simply, is using words that students already know to ask questions or to communicate. So we're staying in bounds. And one of the biggest challenges in asking questions is coming up with questions that are in bounds.
Especially in those first weeks of the year when
they know nothing.
In level 1, where students come to you and like they don't have any words that are in bounds.
So when I originally conceived of this training, I wanted to do it actually as a Pear Deck activity because I'm in love with Pear Deck right now and premium.
Anybody else, if you love Pear Deck,
give us a shout out.
Is there a pear emoji? No, that's like too distracting. You can
also potentially dirty. I don't know. I'm sure there's something about
all
it.
The fruits are dirty.
Yeah.
This isn't that kind of a fun club.
I want to pause because I see a really important question that just came up. What's the difference between comprehended and comprehensible? Martina, do you want to go?
Yes. So comprehended is that students actually understand. When we say comprehensible, that means like reasonably able to be understood. When I'm planning my lessons, I'm going to think about how am I going to present this information such that my students are going to be able to understand. But in the moment, in front of a classroom of students, I have a lot of students in front of me. And they have all sorts of different ranges of working vocabularies, of proficiencies. And so I need to make sure that each one of those students in that classroom understands what I thought in my planning that they would understand. And one of the biggest ways that I do that is by asking questions. And that's why we're here.
So
what would you add anything to that?
No, it's making sure that the students understand what I'm trying to say. So comprehensible is my goal. Comprehended is my goal for them.
Yes. And I would say, Terry, we can't talk about comprehended input without talking about Terry Waltz. I think she has a trademark on it. She is comprehended input and has, I have learned so much from reading her book, TPRS with Chinese Characteristics, and from listening to her trainings, talking about how important it is and how so many problems that we experience as teachers that are trying to communicate with our students are due to students not understanding, and it's on us to make sure that they understand, that they comprehend what we think that they would have or should have.
And surprisingly enough, so many things resolve themselves in a classroom when students understand what you're saying.
Totally true.
It's really incredible. All right, so I would like to share with you a very short story. It's in English because we want to make sure that everybody understands. We're not just the Spanish teacher group here, we are an everybody group here. So read the story. Think, what words might students need help understanding in this story, and type your response. To give a little bit of context, this is the very first story from Somos 1, Unit 1, Day 2. This is your second day of language class. And in class, this, of course, would be in your target language. We're just, again, translating it to English.
So the words that you would have already defined for your students, you would have told them what the words "this is" means and the words "says." So think about, in your target language, which of these words might your students need help understanding beyond "this is" and "says"?
Because there's a lot more words than that.
Yes. And are there any other things in there, Alicia, that to help as everybody's watching this and reading through and trying to think what other words might they need help understanding? Like, what are some things that, what are some categories of words that teachers can think about that maybe students don't need support in understanding?
Well, I would say names are huge. So this is a story that I did with my own class, and we didn't use a Spanish Jorge, we used George, because that reduces the language load. So I know if I'm taking a Chinese class and there's a traditional Chinese name, I can't always distinguish the name from a noun.
Oh my gosh, that's so important. I'm writing this down.
I'm not worried about whether they know about target culture names in this story. That is not my focus. We'll get there. It's fine. Right now, I want them to hear the language. So I'm just going to read some of the comments.
Yeah.
What's your name? They may not know. Hello, OMG.
Yeah, because even things like the alphabet, like even like in Spanish, you know, OMG, like those are just sounds to students. They don't realize that those are letters. So thank you for everybody that pointed that out.
Hello, that's huge. In all kinds of things. So let's go ahead, and I want to share with you what I decided from when I taught novice kids. These are the words that I decided they needed support. Go ahead and go to the next slide. I feel like I need a clicker. Okay, so the core is George. Is target structure. Isn't important, but rabbit is really important. Cat is important. Hello. What is your name? My name is OMG. I eat. And oh no.
Oh, you know, I think, says, no, never mind. Sorry.
Nope.
Forget I said it.
I want to point out that oh no is really important because in a language where no is a cognate, like in French or Spanish, pretty easy. But in Hebrew, for instance, lo, ken. I can never remember which is which. And if it's not up on the board for me in a Hebrew class, like I'm not going to remember what's yes and no. So,
what do you mean up on the board, Alicia?
Oh, up on the board. If it's not made clear to me somewhere where I can see what the word for yes is in the target language, which is ken, I think in Hebrew, and lo is no.
So like having the words yes and no next to your target language on the board so that they can be pointed to when you say them so students know what you're asking.
Yep. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
Thanks for slowing me down. So I see a comment just real fast. Why not says? Because says is part of the unit. So we've already introduced it. And if you're following a SOMOS or the new SOM curriculum, it's probably on the board in your target language and in English so that when you use it, you're pointing to it.
Yeah, so one thing, and yeah, this didn't even occur to me to talk about, so thank you so much for asking that question. One thing that you'll see that is really common in teachers that have been trained in TPRS, which is teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling. That was my first introduction to a more acquisition-friendly approach of language teaching. When I first trained as a language teacher, I was taught that like translation is bad and like that code switching that happens really bad. And I no longer believe that because I have experienced as a student that if I want to understand a message, I want my teacher to tell me what important words mean so that I can understand whatever they're trying to tell me with confidence. So at the beginning of a SOMOS lesson, in Spanish, for example, I would say I would write este es on the board, and next to it, I would write in English, this is, so that students see the translation. They know that este es means this is, and I point to that for quite a long time during the story, every time that I say it, so that students have that help. And again, I do that because now that I have taken to observing other classes and participating in classes of languages that I don't speak, I have experienced that like I need that in order to stay engaged in the lesson and to be able to track what's happening.
So I see a question. Would you do this story with so many words that the kids need? Yes, and. So this is how you start with a very, very novice level class who doesn't have a lot of language. So I know that in the language I teach, hola, hello, is a pretty common thing. So I'm probably going to include it and make sure they understand, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. That's not the key. Same with what is your name? They've probably heard it. My kids almost all have elementary Spanish. So they've heard that, but that's not the important part of the story. The important part is this is and says. Everything else just helps us create a story. The I eat is in there because it's surprising and it's an interesting detail. And in my class, the kids came up with that's what happened. So this is actually a TPRS story that I asked with my kids.
I don't know if this just reminded me of, I've been reading a lot more Spanish language books than I have in a long time lately. And I'm trying to read a lot of more nonfiction and academic books so that I can be pushing my own proficiency. And quite often I'll come across a word that I don't recognize and I look it up and it helps me to understand whatever that statement was. But if that word is never repeated, it's okay. Like, and I might have to look it up again, 20 pages or, later. It's okay that I don't remember it, that it served me looking up that translation, served the purpose for the moment, which was understanding that sentence as I was reading it. Oh, someone's trying to break.
So I see a question. Is it ever okay for them to answer in English? We're going to talk about that, but absolutely. Yes. And we're going to talk about that. So hang on.
Okay.
We'll address that more. Let's move on to, these are ways that we actually make things clear. So the person who asked pictures, personally, I don't use a lot of pictures because pictures are ripe for misinterpretation. And so my preferred way to help students process language is to link meaning to L1. I just tell them what it means. I tell them what it means. I go slow. I ask questions. I contrast meaning. So with this particular story, I had a kid just stand up and I put bunny ears on that kid. And so now we clarified that that was a bunny-eared, like that kid was the rabbit. We learned what rabbit meant. We talked about the rabbit just a little bit. Is this a rabbit or is this a cat? Then I gave the kid some cat ears.
Which would be so fun to do virtually with this application. What's it? Remind everybody that joined us.
Snap camera.
Snap camera.
I don't know how.
Oh my gosh, that would be so.
All the kids would have to do it themselves. I don't know if you could do that, but you could ask them to hold up a picture of the cat, or like there's definitely ways I could think of doing that.
That would be fun.
Somebody said, "Are we reading this to them?" Actually, in this story, for these purposes, we are telling the story or asking the story verbally. So this is a TPRS story. It's the first thing you see, it's the second thing you see in Somos, I believe. So
these are really good questions, and it makes me realize that we need a lot more background with all of these new members. We've got to be giving a lot more context to our to where these things are coming from. But yeah, we would love to answer your questions about those in the comments. But yeah, this is a story. It's being asked. It's being acted out. The students don't see this written initially. The teacher is just telling the story with the support of actors. And as
Myra Kenyon pointed out, using bunny ears is like using pictures. You're absolutely right. Okay, so let's go on. So here's some communicative techniques. Props, big fan of props. Sheltering vocabulary, also staying in bound. So these are all different ways that we help go from comprehensible to comprehended.
And our favorite one that we're going to focus on today,
asking questions. So here's the questions that I decided. So first, here's a bunch of questions that I wrote. And I want you to decide what are questions that use language already in the story, and what are questions that might go out of bounds depending on your target language.
So imagine that you have already shared this story with your students, whatever that looks like. Students have already understood the story. I'm going to have to go
manage children.
Yeah. So the students have already understood this story. What questions can you ask about it to help solidify their understanding without adding new vocabulary words? Hold on.
So Martina's going to go. I want to give you guys a moment, some think time. You can drop them in the comments, or you can just consider it for yourself. Out of these questions, which ones use language already in the story? And what are questions that might go out of bounds?
My daughters have stolen food from downstairs. I think one of them stole food from downstairs and was hiding in the room, and the other one was telling me on the other one. And now I think they're both hiding in there trying to.
Super fun. So I'm seeing questions with likes, questions with, likes to eat, definitely out of bounds. Who questions, we're going to talk about that. Chases rabbits might be out of bounds. Let's see, I think somebody wrote cheese, but they maybe meant chase, probably. Awesome.
Someone wrote a person, and I love that, because especially as a Spanish teacher where person is a cognate, and I think you were going to get to this, but in Spanish, persona and person, it's a cognate. And so we just think, oh yeah, students would know that. But not everybody is teaching with cognate heavy languages. So we've got to be thinking about that. And B, not every cognate is going to be recognizable to students, especially at the beginning. They don't even know to look for cognates.
But I'm going to share with you my favorite cognate trick right now, you guys. Anytime I use a cognate that sounds and means the same in English and in my target language, which is Spanish, I do this. From the side, it looks like this. I just do this, and it's the one time in my class that kids are welcome to shout out what they think it means.
So it's a cue.
So it's a cue. They shout it out, and then I confirm, because some kids can hear it, and it makes them feel really well chuffed, and other kids can't, and it doesn't mean that they're stupid. They're hard to hear, and we talk about that. They're hard to hear, so this is how I confirm. Let's
demo. So pretend that I'm a student in your class, Alicia, and then do it.
Okay, Martina, ¿tú eres una persona?
Person.
Excelente. Persona, person means the same, sounds the same.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, cool. We just wanted to make sure I was checking.
All right, so I see so many questions. I do see somebody mentioning that they're all in bounds, possibly. With scaffolding, with support, with different ways to link meaning. Absolutely. Would you go to the next slide?
Totally.
So, yes or no, probably yes or no, if you give it like that. If you're pointing yes or no, and then the statement. That's probably in bounds. Again, yes or no, Esther is rabbit. Once you've made this language clear. Now remember, you're not going to ask the question before you make the statement. You make the statement. You make sure they understand all the words in the statement, and then you ask a question or questions about the statement. What does Esther eat? I don't think that one was supposed to be one of those.
Oh no.
That is wrong, you guys.
Sorry. That was my fault. I was messing with the slides.
Who is the cat? Now, how would you make who is the cat comprehensible? Martina, is that a question you would consider to be in bounds?
I would, especially when I'm thinking about my room that has the question word my room that doesn't exist anymore, but my room that had the question word posters along the top. So I can point to the word who in the same way that I would point to yes or no. And then is already in the story. Cat is in the story. George, Esther. And there's a lot of different sets of common storytelling words, common question words that we use. If you've ever been in a coaching session, you might have seen one of these posters that has yes, no, who, what, where, when, why, how, either, or, so that you have the tools to be able to quickly point to those questions and help students to understand them.
And then does George or Esther say hello? In some languages, asking that kind of yes or either or question, you don't need a different verb. Like in English, you need does, but in Spanish, you don't.
I remember my linguistics professor, and when I was doing my my master's, he said that his favorite insult was to call somebody a did. And he's like, "Oh, you're such a did," and we're like, "What does that mean?" And he said, "Completely devoid of meaning," because in English, that it just there's that word, that does question word, it carries no meaning. It's just a question marker, and a lot of languages don't need that question marker. So, like in Spanish, if you were asking that question, which is the language that I taught, that word wouldn't even be in the question.
Mm-hmm. So let's look at some questions that are not inbound necessarily. And I want to use the phrase might. So does George like to eat rabbits? Well, in the story, we establish I eat, but it's not to do with George, and it's nothing to do with liking to eat. Those are actually different things. So I would say that is absolutely out of bounds.
Yeah.
Who eats rabbits might be more in bounds. You might notice that I marked, is Esther a cat or a person? So that to remind myself to have the discussion about Cognate. So we got to that.
Person, yeah, somebody already brought that up.
Yes or no, George says goodbye. Goodbye is not in the story. And not every student is going to know that au revoir means goodbye in your French 1 class, right? So goodbye is just adding on to the language load. And then, as y'all mentioned, does Esther eat or chase rabbits? Yeah, chase, they're not going to know that. It took me years to learn that word in Spanish because it's not like part of my daily life. Yeah. I don't chase things normally. I don't have kids.
Yes.
So yes, you always do.
Yeah, and I think that this question of like, okay, how are we even saying like might go out of bounds? Is it inbounds or out of bounds? Like, this is the purpose of this question lab, and this is so important. This was the skill that I needed to develop as I was learning to teach communicatively with my students to help them understand me, is that you have to go you build language in so slowly. And what you think is only sprinkling in a few new words, like, oh, this won't distract them. Like, I just told this story about, this is George is a rabbit. And then I can ask a question that only uses one new word. Like, it should be fine. It's rarely fine, especially not for all of the students in your class. And so we need to look really critically at what we're sharing with our students. And if we really want them to understand, not just hope that they're going to understand, not just make a general sense of things, which may be the purpose sometimes for some things, but in this case, like, we want to engage them in conversation. And if they don't understand the question, if they don't understand that one word in the question that is carrying a lot of meaning, they can't answer it. I mean, I'm sure you've been in a situation before where someone is like asking you a question, and maybe it's not that you don't understand the word, but maybe it's you didn't hear one word, like you just can't figure out what that one word they're saying is. Whether you're on the phone,
like my OPI.
Yeah, and then you're just like, what did you say? And you're like, I'm so sorry. I cannot figure out what you're saying. Like, you can't respond to the question if you don't understand it. And so you've got to look at each word and think, are my students going to need help understanding that? And how do I help them to understand each of those words? Or can I ask a different question?
So I want you to say that again. Can you say that one more time? Okay, I'll try and mirror it back. How can I help my students understand, or do I need to ask another question?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I can say that again.
Okay, moving forward to the next, let's talk about answers. So
Yeah.
almost all of these answers ask students, because it's day 2 and they don't speak any of your language yet, to respond with one-word answers, yes or no, either or.
And those are all questions, the yes, no questions too. Like they can respond with like, even non-verbally, they can give their answer to that question.
So I absolutely believe in accepting L1 and simple or imperfect L2 answers. There's no such thing as, and I did this for a long time.
But
like,
do you make
your
students respond?
So much that my students like started parroting it back to me, and I was like, oh my God. That's not how we talk. I'm not using real life right now. So I accept L1 because often, not always, but to gauge, like if they're responding in L1, maybe I'm asking them to do something that they can't do. So that's the first thing. If I say in Chinese to Martina, do you want to go out later or would you rather have gone out last night? She's not gonna know, right? So that's asking too much. And as language teachers, I think we always overestimate what they should be able to do. And I personally am on a campaign to get rid of the word should. Students should do or should be able to do, because we know that that's not how language acquisition works. It's slow, ordered, developmental, stage-like, and ultimately only depends on the amount of comprehended input that they get for anything to come out. On day 2, nothing's going to come out, guys. It's okay. Accepting imperfect one-word or even L1 answers is communication. I have a dog, and she lets me know when she needs to go out. She doesn't speak the English or the Spanish. She can respond to some commands in both languages. But when she wants to go out, she communicates with me. She noses me. She runs around in a circle like I know what she wants. That's communication. My kids can do this or this. Or, because that's communication too, right?
Yeah. I love that. I've never thought about that, the dog analogy before. And I love that because like you have a relationship with your dog, and that's possible because you're accepting the form of communication that Juniper is able to give you.
Very much.
Yeah. And like were a fairy to appear and make them able to speak human, I'm sure they would, but in the meantime, like they're not. So like your students will get there, they'll be excited, they'll be able to communicate with you in the target language eventually. But for now, like how great that you can have a relationship with them by you accepting their answers, whatever that looks like.
And accepting them where they're at, not expecting them to be somewhere else. And lastly, to encourage participation. So in my class, I want everybody to answer because that shows me if they're engaged, and it helps us create our community. We'll talk more about engagement later. We actually did a whole at-home fun club about engagement, so you can go back to that if you want. This is from like 3 weeks ago, where we talk a lot about engagement, what it looks like, ways to get it, and that sort of thing. The other thing is that L1 is not a crime. So I just want to say that it's our shared language. And if they're communicating, how awesome is that? They understood something I said in the target language. That's the point.
Yeah.
So I really would love for teachers to just think about that a student responding to a question in L1 is a sign of engagement and a sign of understanding and actual communication. The goal is that they respond in L2, but it's going to take time, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think back to our mindset shifts fun club, and you know how we've talked so much about mindset over the last couple of years, and just what a huge mindset shift that was for me. That like using L1 in a language class is not the crime. Like when you have a shared language, because not everybody does, but when you do have the luxury of having a shared language, accessing that language strategically is so valuable to creating community, to connecting your students, and to helping them to learn or acquire the new language. Oh my gosh, they're
And
back
it doesn't
beating
make
on my door
anything
again.
less rigorous. I want to say that using L1 doesn't diminish the rigor of a class. And I'd be happy to talk about that offline about why that's the truth. But let's move on.
How do questions enhance instruction, Alicia?
This is so important. We want our students to feel like they can. So if you ask a question that a student can answer in a target language on the second day, boy, they're going to feel great. It helps them build confidence and success. But more importantly, if you ask questions that students can answer, it sends the message that all students are capable of acquiring a language. We know that this is true. All students are capable of acquiring a language. And we also know that if students don't believe that they can, that's going to get in the way of their learning. We know we get students who have a lot of ideas about whether they can or can't, whether they're good at languages, they're too old to learn a language, all of these things that they bring. Building confidence is a huge goal. And are you putting on a tutu?
She's putting on a princess dress. She needed my help.
Okay. Very,
Yes.
very good.
Also, she loves your unicorn horn. Okay, bye, girls.
Hi.
Go find Daddy. She said goodbye, unicorn.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Close the door. Go find Dad. Bye, unicorny. This is so important. So my mom and my mother-in-law are both taking a Spanish class right now. They're taking beginning Spanish with Karen Rowan. It's a Fluency Fast online course. And my mother-in-law in particular has such a complex about like, I'm not smart enough to learn a language. Like she has spent some time in Guatemala and she feels like everyone else can do it and she can't. And so just her being in Karen's class and Karen being so careful about introducing new words, about, asking questions that are building confidence. Like my mother-in-law and my mom too, but it's been so cool to watch my mother-in-law believe that she is someone who can learn Spanish and that someday she's going to be able to communicate significantly, your cat, with these people that she's been building relationships with. So I think
that's so important. And I would mirror that with my dad, who has lost most of his Spanish due to old age and early onset Alzheimer's. He took a Karen class and came out so proud of himself. And it was so beautiful to see everyone is capable of acquiring a language.
Yeah.
And that's just a fundamental belief.
I after them going through this class, like I'm like, okay, who else in my life do I need to watch learn a language? Because for me, it has been so affirming and encouraging to see like, I mean, obviously I know it, but like to really see like, oh my gosh, this way of teaching really works. Like here are these people that have been trying all these different things throughout their life and like, really it works. So we'll have to drop the link to Fluency Fast in the comments afterward for anybody else that has folks in their life wanting to learn languages.
All right. Next slide. Another reason asking questions helps students hear a wide variety of contextualized language. So just hearing questions helps students hear a lot of language. And this presentation is not about asking personalized questions or higher order thinking questions, but if you also ask and answer questions about the kids and answer them for yourself, and your language has like different verb forms, like first person or second person, you don't even need to teach those because kids are getting the data as long as they understand the messages. So those just become part of your classroom discourse. It's incredibly freeing, and it's one of my favorite things about not having to, about teaching with a focus on proficiency, that I don't really need to worry about all of those grammar things, because that's not how our brain picks up language. Asking and answering questions in context and understanding the answers, that's what's going to do it. So
Yeah.
that's really
It
cool.
is, it has relieved so much pressure for me that I know that as long as I'm just using language to communicate with my students, that they are going to have the language that they need to communicate with other humans. And that I don't need to worry about like, oh, have I taught them, and I quizzed them, and have we done enough creative activities for whatever verb form? Like, that's not how language acquisition works. And all I have to do is talk to my kids, which sometimes can be terrifying,
Right.
but it's good.
And learning how to ask questions is one of the skills.
Yeah, big time.
To do this, to get there. It's just one piece, I'll be honest.
And this kind of questions that we're talking about today, these really simple questions where you're looking at what is in the piece of content that you're trying to talk about, and considering what questions can I ask that are going to use only the words in that content, and what questions are asking are being asked using words that are outside of it, is just one layer of questions. That's like the foundation. And then where do we go from there?
So the last piece is that questions create connection, and we want connection over curriculum.
Big time.
Asking questions helps you get to know your students and helps them see that you know them. My kids can all answer all kinds of questions about my cat, my dog, my husband, my bikes, and I know all of that information about them too. Not the husband, obviously, but like what they're interested in, what kind of biking they do, if they hate biking, like all of that, because we connect. And that to me is what brings joy into my life, is connecting with kids, helping them build confidence. As I believe Myra pointed out on the comments, that's something we learned from Lori Clark, is that building confidence, helping students find success, finding that connection is how we build success in our class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think especially right now, that helping students know, to see that you see them and know them is so important. Like I think about my kids trying to do their online classes, and they just want to still be seen by their teacher. And when you're looking at a grid view of, so many kids and your mic's off, like it can feel really pointless.
Or when the only attention you're getting is get back to the screen or eyes on the screen, right?
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, like that is so hard when teaching this synchronously on a web service. It's something that I'm really working on to improve in my own practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so layering in these questions just helps students know that, like, hey, I know you're still here, and I still care about you, and if you're understanding, if you're tracking, and what's going on in your life.
So I'm going to take a second and pull up some comments. I know, I'm seeing comments about distance learning, connection. Yeah, it is tough, you guys.
Yeah, so I saw that, like, this is not just like Mental Health Awareness Month, but also it's Mental Health Awareness Week. And I just feel like that is the biggest thing right now. I mean, I have personally been having a lot of stuff going on in my life that is really hard. And so then any kind of, I don't know, computer responsibility, anything, like my threshold is already here for stress. And I just don't really want to do any of this stuff.
Yeah.
What is that? What are you now?
It's a sparkling unicorn horn.
Oh.
I know. Because, let's just keep it joyful. So what other questions do you all have?
First days of class, do you speak to the students in the target language? Yes.
And if I only spoke to them in the target language, we would never establish communication. Bryce Hedstrom has this awesome story on his website somewhere that's an excerpt from a book about a Spanish teacher's first day, where she's doing all these charades and miming, and like the students have absolutely no idea what she's saying, and they spend a whole hour trying to like decode her acting, but she's not a very good actor. And I can relate. I definitely had that Spanish teacher at one point or another. And you can speak the target language from the first day, judiciously, carefully. Personally, I choose to not overwhelm them because in the community that I teach, they've heard that Senora Stay is a really hard teacher, and she's like pretty strict. I prefer structured. And that she uses a lot of Spanish, and like, you're gonna use a lot of Spanish. So they come in and they're really scared. And I ask them in English, what are you scared about? And they're like, we're just gonna speak Spanish. And I'm like, well, we're speaking English right now, right? We're communicating. It's okay to communicate. And my goal is to make it so that we can speak in Spanish together. So trust me.
If you have the Somos lesson plans, or we also have them in French, the first unit is free. And so you can look at that. And I say in there what I did with my students, what I did in English, and what I did in Spanish. So you can kind of look to see their, oh gosh.
We're getting all kinds of fun stuff right now. Oh my God, I want that.
No, she's going to be a fairy dinosaur.
That's wonderful.
So you can see that, and you don't have to be me. Like, if you can do whatever you want to do, but that will at least give you an idea of what I did and how I start off the year.
I want to highlight something that somebody said, which is listening to students' answers is key. And thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
It scrolled by in my feed, so sorry, didn't catch the name, but that's so important. Listening to what students have to say is important. Now, if it's just yes or no, that requires a different kind of listening. But actually listening to students is key. We talk all the time about building relationships and don't really talk about how, or what that looks like. And I think listening to students' answers is really important.
Yeah.
So other questions?
And huge to model for life as well, that like, you don't ask a question just to like check off the box of asking the question. Like, you ask a question and then you listen to their response. And obviously like that, the interpersonal communication is slow to come in when you're learning a language. And so giving students that space to allow for some interaction in English is really important.
I see. I see Courtney. Thank you, Courtney Jackson, for replying. The Somos and the new SOM units are on Teachers Pay Teachers. I'm using Snap Camera, which just Google it and figure out how to install it on your device. I'm not tech support. My husband is, and I am not that. Somebody asked if I'm still currently teaching. Yes, I am. Actually, I am wrapping up my school year, and I'm absolutely heartbroken and putting off the day when I have to go clean out my classroom. I have the best classroom, and it is heartbreaking that I've been in this like 8x8 office rather than my actual classroom. So yeah. Any other burning?
But next year.
But next year, I'm gonna have all of your classrooms. Yeah. I hope that I will be invited into when we can all, go places and see each other again. But next year, my focus is definitely going to be on supporting teachers with remote, distance, continuous, whatever you want to call it, learning. But we know that communication takes place face to face, and that's a really important part of it. So we're not going to let that part of our work and of supporting teachers slide. I am so excited to work with teachers. I love working with teachers. I love seeing other people. And I found out that I have like 5 relatives that teach in the Denver public school system that I didn't even know about. So I really want to go to Denver and go hang out in their classrooms.
I want to come with you.
Learn from them. Doesn't that sound amazing?
That's really cool. Yeah. And I don't want to like derail the conversation too much, but I do want to say like one thing that Alicia and I really talked about is, we considered her coming on full-time as director of training is it's really hard to leave the classroom. And also, wondering about, well, if I leave the classroom, like, am I really still going to be able to support teachers because I'm not having that experience day in and day out? But the problem that I've run into is that school districts need trainers during the week. They need trainers on weekends. They need trainers for their in-services. And when teachers are in the classroom teaching, they don't have like unlimited days off that they can take. And so we do need, as a profession, we do need people who are full-time trainers, not in the classroom. And, I think that Alicia has so much experience training and so much classroom experience that I'm just really thankful she was willing to make this move, even though it's a really hard one.
There is one, there are a couple questions that have scrolled by, and thank you. I'm so excited, but I really want to address this one. Oh, stop scrolling. So somebody said, what about what they should do? Okay, so I get that there is a thing and that many of us are under pressure about should. So my answer may not satisfy you, and I apologize for that in advance. But this is echoing some of what Dr. Bill Van Patten has said over and over again about the nature of language. Students can't speak, students can't communicate without massive amounts of input, and expecting them to is developmentally inappropriate. Like, we don't ask our 5-year-olds to speak in paragraph level discourse. And yet our Spanish students have way less input than a 5-year-old, or our language students, my apologies. So while we're working in a context that requires things that maybe are not appropriate, that requires compromise, absolutely. And it requires some creativity. And on my part, I believe that it also requires some quiet subversiveness and some advocacy, and really arming yourself with, I don't like that phrase, I'm sorry, really being prepared with, well, how does language get acquired? And what is appropriate for them to be able to do at this point with this amount of input, knowing that every student is different, the same way kids start talking at different times, right? Kids are in language class are like that too. So the mechanisms in our brain are really what control it, not the classroom. And I just want to reiterate that.
Yeah,
and you're looking at should.
Yeah, and has been one of our big mindset shifts is the manage expectations before behaviors. And one thing with interpersonal communication, I know that in all of my language classes growing up, we had a lot of like these recorded dialogues that we would do. And I think that was because we want students to be able to engage in conversation. So we figure if we just make them engage in conversations by giving them words to say, that they'll be able to parrot those back. And that's not how language acquisition works. And it's taking class time away from spending time, rehearsing those dialogues, recording those dialogues, all the things. That's taking class time away from the most important thing, which is input. That's the thing that's really going to push them to be able to eventually engage in interpersonal discourse. So that is why we do that.
So let's see. I want to wrap this up because you guys have been with us for a whole hour.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yes.
And I'm so sorry about that. I do see that you guys want to talk. You want more training on online. I got to get the training first, you guys. Like I'm in a lab now every day trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
So when we will, and we know that y'all want it. And we also know that we're figuring it out too.
Yeah.
So please know that.
And we are so excited. I know I've said it like 5 million times. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to have Alicia on board full time this fall. And, when we made that decision, we had already booked all of these places for her to be going to connect with districts that are using Somos or just looking to learn more about comprehension-based teaching. And we realized that those plans are going to be shifting quite significantly for this fall. So we are working on shifting our training models to be flexible and to have online options, and how we can still deliver the same quality experience. So please do keep reaching out. I know it sounds like a lot of you guys are hungry for training right now, both in this way of teaching generally, and then also like, how do you bring this to a distance learning format? And we are committed to getting you what you need by the time that you need it. So, oh, hi, Millie. But
also remember that I'm a full-time teacher.
Yes. Yes.
So there's one other piece that I want to share with you. We do hope to turn this question lab into more of a formal training that people can join in a more formal, that means possibly for a small cost, but we're not sure, way. And a lot of other, and I see that a lot of people want just more feedback. So that might be the place to get that. Last and most also useful, if you're just joining, if you're new to the Somos group or the Somos curriculum, what we were sharing today was just the very first part of the first unit, and looking at a TPRS story. And the reason we chose this was because asking questions is core to helping keep your language comprehended, not just comprehensible. Mm-hmm. So with that,
one other thing, though, because on the note of people joining the group for the first time, we are so excited that you have been here for this training. You do not have to use Somos to be in the Somos collaboration group. You don't have to teach Spanish to be in the Somos collaboration group. We are very, oh my goodness, we are a very purpose-driven group, and it is a moderated group, and we like to, we make sure that we stay on topic so that we know that if teachers have questions, they can come here and find answers to those questions quickly in the group. So, so what that means, if you're not using Somos, but you still want to be accessing these trainings, please feel free to stay in the group, but unfollow it. So if the questions about Somos are filling up your news feed, just unfollow the group. You can stay in it, and then you can just join us whenever we're having trainings like this. You can go back and watch the recorded versions later. And there are so many other awesome groups to ask general questions about language teaching, about teaching specific languages, about how do you say things in different languages, about comprehension,
about using teaching, novels, about teaching for elementary kids, about teaching with languages with different language characteristics.
Yeah. And so we would love to connect you, whatever questions you have, we would love to connect you with the best group to get those questions answered. If that's in the Somos group, great. Otherwise, please do stay and let us fill your newsfeed as much as you're comfortable with.
All right. Have a great afternoon, and thanks for being here. We will go back and try to respond to comments when we can.
Yes. Yes, we will. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Maybe. Let's see if I know how to end this. We'll see you next week for a surprise.